So we've been doing this guest preacher for a while now. One Sunday a month, Reverend Kim has the Sunday off, and we try to find a guest preacher. And I knew that I wanted to do it, but I had no idea what I wanted to speak about. And so I've been praying and thinking and trying to come up, what do I want to speak about? And then one Sunday it occurred to me, well, what's my favorite scripture? And why can't I speak about that? And so that's what I decided to do. And this scripture that was read this morning from 1 Corinthians is my favorite scripture, which might seem odd to you because it's usually read at weddings, and it's about that feeling of love and all of that. And so how does that apply to me and be my favorite scripture? Well, I read that in a little bit different way when I read that scripture. What I see in that scripture is an opportunity to guide my behavior. I'm going to take and read a few sections of it, a few verses 4 through 6. And I'll give you an example of how I internalize it and use it as a guide for how I interact with people. Verse 4 through 6, love is patient, love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. That's the section that really speaks to me. And I'll read it a little bit differently and show you how I interpret it, how I internalize it. And replace the word love with I. I am patient. I am kind. I am not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. I do not insist on my own way. I am not irritable or resentful. I do not rejoice in the wrongdoing, but I rejoice in the truth. And I try to behave that way with my family, with my coworkers, with people I meet. And if I practice that and try to interact that way, I believe I'm doing God's work. I believe that, we don't have to be professing God at every turn, but if we behave this way and we live this way, that's how we do God's work. The other part of this, and the last verse of Bruce's song speaks to it. It's one of the reasons why we chose that. Not only was it a perfect fit for the scripture, but the last verse of Bruce's song is very fitting. I'm not perfect, and I don't do this every day with every person I meet. It's not something that it's constantly in the front of my mind, and we all make mistakes. And the last line of Bruce's song there is, if I tell you that I love you, and then life gets in the way, pray for me to return to you, right? Because that's how it is sometimes you want to do the best you can, and life gets in the way or other things happen, and you just slip up, and you got to pray that you can recenter and refocus and come back. And so that's how I read this scripture. That's how I kind of let it shape who I am and how I do it. When did this happen? I don't know. Like all faith journeys, it evolves over time. I can't tell you when this became my favorite scripture. We've heard it many times all through the years. It's read during church. It's read at weddings. And somewhere along the line, I read that and I saw those feelings of love, but I saw the actions in it too, and said, you know what, that's a good way to behave. And so that's how that became my favorite scripture, and that's what I like to try and model when I meet people and interact with people. So that's the scripture part. I'd like to share a story, kind of a faith witness story about prayer. Part of my beliefs with prayer, my understanding of prayer, right? You don't pray for the big things. You don't pray for $1 million. You don't pray for the new car. You pray for guidance, you pray for wisdom, you pray for knowledge, particular situations, how can I get through this? But to ask God to solve the problem for you and just snap his fingers, that's not going to happen. That's not the way I see it. And I also don't expect instant gratification, right? We've heard this 1,000 times. It's on God's time, not your time. You might ask for a prayer, and it might be years before you realize, oh, he just answered me. So those are two foundations of prayer for me that I go by. You don't ask for the big things, and you don't expect instant gratification. Well, I want to tell you a story about both of those. My daughter, Jennifer, she graduated from college a few years ago. And upon graduation, she got a job working for Disney Cruise Lines as a performer. And she was going to be away for us for 9 months. You know, she's 22 years old, but even as parents of a 22-year-old, you're still going through firsts in your life. And this was going to be the first time that our daughter was going to be away for that long a time. She was going to be gone for 9 months. She was going to be 8 weeks in Toronto for rehearsals, and then another 7 months on board the ship as she was performing. And that was difficult for us as a family because we've never been separated that long. And it was particularly challenging for Mom, having her first child go away. So we decided that we were going to go see her. We were going to take a cruise on the ship she was on. And we wanted to go visit her so that we didn't have to go all that time around seeing her. And we decided to take this cruise the week between Christmas and New Year's. Now, if you've ever traveled between Christmas and New Year's, we hadn't before. It was a fatal mistake, number one. But if you've ever traveled between Christmas and New Year's, the airports are crazy and the weather is usually lousy. And so we had a perfect plan. We were going to fly to Florida. We were going to be in Orlando by 11:30 in the morning. We were going to be at the ship, on board the ship by 1, and have a perfect afternoon wandering around the ship and enjoying life on the ship. Except for the travel didn't go that well. We missed our connecting flight in Charlotte. And when we got there, we were told there were no flights going to Orlando. The best opportunity you had was to go on standby, which now put our trip in danger, right? We didn't know when we were going to get to Orlando. Not only was there that emotional component of not having seen our daughter for several months, but there was that, in my mind, there was that financial component because the cruise was already paid for, the airline was already paid for. If we don't make the ship, we're done, right? So they said the best we can do is get you on standby. So we went to the gate where the next flight was leaving from, and we checked in. And there was 3 of us traveling, Christine and I and my younger daughter, Kim. And I looked, we were numbers 22, 23, and 24 on the standby list. And I'm like, oh, man, we're never getting on board this plane. We aren't going to make it. And the anxiety is high, the tension is high, and Christine was anxious and nervous, and she's like, go talk to the people at the counter. Tell them we have to get this ship. And if we don't make it, we're going to miss the ship. And I'm like, but Chris, there's 22 people in front of us that all have the same story. The airline people aren't going to listen and worry about ours. They're just going to take people off the list one at a time. Yeah, but we got to get to that ship. I'm like, well, if you feel that strongly, I said, go talk to them, plead your case, and see what they say. So Chris went and stood in line to speak to the boarding agent, and I sat there and prayed. And I did what I don't normally do. I prayed for the big one. I said, dear God, get us on this plane. Get us on this plane so that we can get to Florida and we can see Jennifer. Christine came back a few minutes later, just sat down next to me, and I said, so what did the boarding agent say? She took a big sigh and said, she told me it would take an act of God to get us on this plane. Okay, well, here we are. We aren't going to make it. And of course, we didn't get on that flight, right? They boarded everybody, and they said, anybody who's still here, stay behind. We'll put you on the standby list for the next flight. Well, now we got on the list and we're out in the main concourse. We left the boarding gate. We're out in the main area of the airport. And all three of us, complete anxiety just took over. And Christine sat on the floor and was absolutely beside herself. Kim was on the phone with Jennifer. Jennifer's on board the ship saying, where are you guys? How come you're not here? And I'm trying to call Disney to tell them, hey, we didn't make the flight, right? Let them know we're still in transit. When all of a sudden, out of nowhere, boarding agent comes up and says, hands me tickets, and says, Mr. Wilson, will this work? In my confusion, in my craziness, I'm kind of just staring at these tickets, and I see that there's seat assignments, 29A, 29B, 20. I said, there's seat assignments. She said, yes, Mr. Wilson. I got you tickets on that next flight. Will that work for you? I was like, oh my God, I don't know. So let me call Disney. So in my craziness, hectic state, I called Disney and I said, we missed this flight, but we're on this flight. Can we still make it? And they assured me, yes, we'll get you on board the ship. And I hung up with Disney and I turned around and that lady's gone. I don't know who she was. I don't know why she was watching out for us, right? She was an angel sent by God to me, and she got us tickets on that flight. And I realized at that moment that, you know what, sometimes prayers are answered instantly. We didn't get on the flight we were trying to, but we had tickets for the next flight, and we were going to get to Florida. Now, of course, our travels didn't go smoothly from there. That flight was delayed again, and we got to Orlando very late, and we had called Disney to say, this flight's delayed, and we're going to be in at this time. And they said, okay, we can still make it. So we got to Orlando, and we get through the airport, we get on the bus, we get to the pier, everything's empty. We are the last ones to get on the ship. The ship is supposed to depart at 5 o'clock, and we're going through the terminal at 4:45. And so they lead us through the terminal. The main gate on board the ship where you come in has been closed. We're going in through the freight entrance, and we get on board the ship, and I turn around, and they're literally closing the bulkhead doors behind us. That's how late we were getting on board the ship. And they check us in right there, and there was a Disney staff member who said, welcome aboard, Wilson family. I'll take you to your room. And so she walked us over to the elevator, and I'm telling the staff member, my daughter is a performer. We're here to see her on a cruise, and but we haven't seen her yet. She was supposed to start work at 5 o'clock, and by now it's like 10 of 5, right? By the time we got checked in and got on the elevator, it's about 10 of 5. And the elevator had a glass back on it, so that as it came up through the main atrium, there's decks 3, 4, and 5, there's that big atrium where you can see everything, and the glass elevator's going up. And as I'm telling the staff member about this, I turn to look out, and I can see my daughter, Jennifer, and she's walking through the atrium. And so I start banging on the glass. I don't know if she can hear me, I don't know, but I'm banging on the glass, and she did hear it, and she looks up, and I couldn't hear what she said, but I read her mouth. She said, get off. Get off. I'm like, what do you mean, get off? We're in the elevator, we're going to deck 8, and we're on deck 3. Get off. How do we, I consider it God watching out for us. I don't know why. That elevator stopped on deck 4, and the doors open. I don't know, because again, it was a hectic, crazy, confusing day. I believe what happened is somebody was waiting on deck 4 to get on the elevator. We got off and they got on. But that was another angel put there so that elevator would stop. We got off the elevator on deck 4, and Jennifer came running up the stairs. And after having not seen her for about 6 months or so, 7 months or so, we had that family moment with the big hug and the excitement of finally getting to where we were trying to go. And it was a wonderful moment. That was in spite of all of the difficulties we had on that trip, that moment of seeing her in out the back of the elevator and having the door miraculously open so that we could get off and see her that was my favorite part of the whole trip. And she's like, I gotta go. And by now it's like 5 minutes to 5, and she's got to be to work at 5 o'clock. And so we literally had about 30 seconds together, so that everybody got a hug and we were able to give her a kiss. And okay, go to work. We'll see you later. She's off at 10. Okay, we'll find you at 10 o'clock. And so that was it. That was so that's my faith witness story, where it was one of the few moments in life where you have to believe that God is watching out for you and God is there to help. And it was apparent to me on that day, you can ask for the big one sometimes, if it's the right big one, I guess. And it can be answered instantly, because I believe that's what was going on that day. We were in the airport and with no hope of getting onto that ship to see Jen. And we made it just in the nick of time. The doors closed behind us, but we made it. And I'm confident that my faith and God's miraculous work helped that happen. So that's my talk for today. Different things, but that's how I look at things. That's how I see things, and I hope you enjoyed that story. And we'll move on. So, thank you.